Has AI changed? I know it's like the topic of, I feel like my lifetime. I keep thinking of my grandma who lived like 99. And I just always looked at her television and thinking like, you grew up without electricity, water in a well. And now it's like, for us, it's this AI thing. Has that affected like the projects that you're working on? Has that affected how that you staff projects? How are you growing now? Is it mostly referrals, or are you just like, it's a great spot to be in number one. There's a lot of problems that disappear with that versus any other position. But I'm curious, like, how are you growing differently now?
To streamline that process and really exponentially increase not only the onboarding time, but potentially increase the number of acquisitions you can do in a given year because of eliminating a lot of that manual process and looking at how AI can drive that efficiency and value for the organization.
Michael, welcome to Growth Stories. So happy to have you on the show. So you have a Fortium, which is a technology leadership as a service consultancy. Can you tell me a little bit about what is this consultancy and what's the service you provide to the market?
Yes, Fortium Partners has been around for about 11 or 12 years. They're headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a partner with them. And Fortium provides technology executives, so that of a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, or a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, executives on a fractional as well as interim basis. So we're brought in for our much larger clients, which could be as large as Fortune 50 companies. If a technology executive has left or been asked to leave, we come in and fill that gap and run overall operations and own the IT strategy for that organization, and even help those organizations find who the permanent executive would be. We're not a search agency. We're just a leadership as a service firm, and we work with a number of different recruiting firms to find that permanent position. For smaller and mid-sized companies, we provide fractional leadership as those companies continue to grow.
Love it. So so I'm just imagining these different types of companies. So I could imagine, say, at a larger company with 1,000 employees or more, maybe there's been a management change and somebody in the technology leadership area has been let go. And so you guys kind of keep everything running while they find a more permanent solution, or somebody to step in full time. And then if it's a smaller company, obviously they might not be able to afford a full-time CIO, CSO. And so you're coming in and helping them create a strategy for technology. Is that right?
Exactly. Now, there have been some instances where a large company has decided to tackle another strategic initiative, and maybe their current executive technology leader is not able to cover that, plus the other initiatives are already underway. So they may bring in a Fortium technology leader to help lead that project or that initiative. And then once it's done, we roll off as well.
Yeah.
So lots of
Like
creative
additional
ways.
firepower.
Exactly. And one of our fastest growing areas in our organization is with partnering with private equity firms, where they brought us in helping them oversee the technology operations of their portfolio companies, positioning a company that they're wanting to then resell, or even be part of the due diligence process of really understanding the technologies that are in place at a company they're looking at acquiring. And so that's
I could see, like, for example, for some reason, I was just learning about this, that right now, one of the many areas that PE firms are looking to roll up is veterinarian practices. So they're like buying up all the veterinarian practices and then, consolidating the back ends of those businesses. And so that could be an example where, okay, they want someone to come in, provide a strategy for that roll up. Would that be kind of the application?
Yeah. And like I said, there's been private equity firms that, especially a lot of them, have now even moved to what would be blue collar companies, where they acquired a lot of HVAC or plumbing or different types of services businesses. And as you can imagine, some of those were founder owned companies that they really didn't have a significant amount of technology associated with that, where now they're wanting to modernize a lot of those services and offerings. And so they work with Fortium to help build that strategy and lay out the overall technology roadmap of where that private equity firm needs to go from a technology investment to achieve.
That's such a good example. I can imagine perhaps some blue collar types of industries, they're not in technology. So perhaps there's a gap there And if you're going to roll up many of them, there's a huge opportunity for where several things might have been done manually. I'm thinking about, in lean factories, people can do anything with a whiteboard, but eventually, people at the whiteboard might not scale.
Exactly, exactly. And another example in those private equity firms and around the due diligence is historically, when you think about due diligence and what private equity firms do and partnering with advisory companies, they focus a lot of energy on the HR side, the finance side, the operations. But historically, they haven't done a lot on the technology side. They think they've covered all the technology when they look at the financial contracts and all of that. But then they recognize once they start to uncover everything, and sometimes this is post acquisition, that they realize that there's a lot of effort and work that's going to go in to integrate those existing systems into their environment, or even try to work with those environments based on what they acquired. And for some firms, it's cost them several $1 million to integrate that company into, that they would have really liked to have known that maybe during the due diligence period, and either adjusted their price point or maybe even decided to walk away, which then is going to really put a fire under the companies that are looking at selling their companies, to kind of get their house in order to make them more attractive to those companies that are buying.
And the way you describe that, I'm just thinking about it, that an older mindset was we can just look at contracts and that's going to tell us, or the P&L, we're going to see what we need to know about the state of the IT world. It's like a more refined way to evaluate technology beyond the contract.
Exactly, because the contract's going to tell you what the relationship is with that vendor they're working with, but it's not really going to dig into was this a custom bit of applications? Was it an off-the-shelf application that was heavily modified to meet the needs of that business? But then you realize that if you're acquiring that company, you're also inheriting those systems. And so
Technical debt.
Exactly. So now are you wanting to somehow figure out how I can take that system and the data in that system and integrate it into my system, which, may be possible, may not. And so it's just as part of that due diligence and upfront planning to determine, again, they may be willing to buy that company, but at least they know there's going to be further investments. So the firm will then adjust what their price point might be to purchase that company because of those additional investments that historically just hasn't really been looked at. And burdened a few private equity firms one too many times, and now they're like,
and now they are all aware. I've personally been burned by making the mistake to build custom software in a past life. So I can imagine, at larger scales, this could be even more painful. So It sounds like for a lot of the PE firms, you're really looking at it. I mean, if I had to try to put it in a box, it sounds to me like a lot of migration projects, integration, like scoping to understand how bad is it to kind of merge these two systems to get data from here to there. If you want to reuse this company's backend, like how are we going to, talk to the other systems? Are there other areas that you guys focus in, or is this like the primary area?
No, I mean, again, when you think about a technology executive on the CIO side, that's really focused on how the organization as a whole utilizes technology to move their organization forward, right? To create a competitive advantage amongst the competitors, to really drive future growth, efficiencies, productivity. When you think of the CTO, that's generally more of developing a technology product that is then sold to their consumers or to other companies. And sometimes that's going to be around a SaaS offering. And that CTO is really driving the technology strategy of that product, which is a revenue generating product for the company. And then the CISO is, of course, looking at kind of as an umbrella over the CIO, CTO, looking at security as a whole. So how can we protect the intellectual property of the organization? How can we protect the organization from threats externally that may get into their organization through hackers or through malware or
ransomware and all that
stuff like that? Yeah. And so those three areas, we provide those executives. And I think the value proposition that makes us the largest firm of our kind in the country and the most reputable is to be a partner with Fortium. You have to have been in the IT industry for over 20 years. You had to have served as a CIO, CTO, or CISO at least at 2 or 3 different companies. So when you are providing your services to a Fortium client, they know they have an executive that has been in the trenches, right? Has lived these types of challenges and can hit the ground running because they're leading with experience and not, a consultant that's come in and this is their first time acting as a CIO. our CTO
Right.
or CIO.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Responsible adults is the phrase that comes
exactly.
to mind. Like you want someone that's been there, seen it. Yeah. Love it.
And
Okay. So that's great. And I'm curious. So now you're the largest, but I'd love to hear, like, how did you guys start and how did you get your very first client?
yeah, so Fortium was founded by a couple of people, of which those individuals came from Tatum Consulting, which is a firm that's still in business. It has a similar model to what Fortium does, but it was recognized when those individuals transitioned out of Tatum, they recognized that historically you've always seen this fractional CFO or a
Hmm.
fractional chief marketing officer or a chief revenue officer. But the
Yeah.
concept of a fractional IT executive is still relatively young. Probably it's only
Hmm.
been in the industry the last 10 to 15 years. Fortium really saw that there was a gap in that area of having experienced executives provide value to companies. And so that the company was founded again in Dallas back about 11 years ago. And I'm not sure who the first client was, but I'm sure it was based upon the network of those founders that had those connections. But since then, we have supported thousands of clients across the United States and Canada, and again, have been very successful growth year over year, double-digit growth over the last 8, 9 years of the 11 years the company's been in business.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I'm while you're describing that, I'm thinking of similar models. They're not quite the same sector. So just off the top of my head, one other one I remember is like I think it's like Rocket Fuel, which is
Was it?
CTOs as a service, but they are really aiming, if I got it correct, they're aiming more at startups, very early stage. And it
Yeah.
sounds like from what you described, you're aiming more at established companies in these specific time frames.
It depends. So in the CTO
Depends.
side, because it's a lot around the development of a product that a company is going to sell, we have worked with a lot of startups. And again, these are experienced CTOs that have done this before. And in their companies, those companies may have been started as a startup that then were sold. And they may be a serial, entrepreneur type individual in that CTO role that has done this for several companies in the past. And so yeah, I mean, it would be similar to that, but I think in addition to that, we do provide CTO services for established companies as well. And so they may be looking at expanding their market presence by looking into additional products and services that they've done market research to see that consumers or other companies may be interested in these products. And they would
Hmm.
bring in Audium to help expedite the development of that product because, again, they're buying the experience of individuals being in those types of situations in the past.
Makes sense. And it definitely makes sense. And so, so you started, with some founders leaving another established consult with a large network. You've grown so much. How are you growing now? Is it mostly referrals, or are there other? Are you just like it's a great spot to be in number one? There's a lot of problems that disappear with that versus any other position. But I'm curious, like, are you growing differently now?
No, I mean, it's still relatively the same. So, as a partner with Fortium, I provide CIO executive services to companies because that's my industry background, is more on the CIO side. And within the company, 60% of the opportunities that the partners work on are fielded based upon companies reaching out to Fort. And so we
Hmm.
have an inside sales group that kind of works with those different companies. And then the other 40% may be coming from those partners' network, right? Where they have worked with other companies in the past, or someone they know has reached out to them and said, hey, we need services. And then we introduce that company to 40. And then if that opportunity works out, then you may be in an engagement helping that particular company. So it's more of like a 60-40 split, but all of our growth is organic growth. And so
Yeah.
we are growing organically. We haven't acquired any companies that would drive that growth. And there's a significant demand not only for the talent, but also the fact that organizations are looking at tying a lot of their investments to get a return on investment on them. And so being able to bring in experienced resources that are going
Yeah.
to provide their past experience to drive value into that company has become very attractive to a lot of companies.
I mean, that's the most expensive is what you don't know. So if there's a way to shortcut that by bringing in somebody knowledgeable, it's almost always worth it if the opportunity is there. Has AI changed? I know it's like the topic of, I feel like my lifetime. I keep thinking of my grandma who lived like 99, and I just always looked at her television thinking like, you grew up without electricity, water in a well, and now it's like for us it's this AI thing. Has that affected like the projects that you're working on? Has that affected how that you staff projects?
Absolutely. Now, I've been in the IT industry for, like I said, almost 30 years. AI in itself has been around since the 1950s, right? AI was being used within mainframe technology
Yeah,
years ago.
not
What
the
is
same though.
new?
Not the same as
Yeah, what is new with AI today is the generative AI and the
yeah,
agenetic AI. And what that really means is if you kind of translated that, it's more of what we would consider the front end AI. It's AI available to the consumers of technology, where historically AI has been more on the back end systems of automating processes and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it has transformed how organizations are taking advantage of streamlining technology processes. Now, for most companies, when they look at AI, their mouths start to water from the fact of look at how much money we could save by exiting resources out of an
yeah,
organization,
yeah,
automating that. And there is some truth into that. But there's also a lot of companies that have jumped in to the AI world with both feet without having strong business cases and business reasons why they're adopting AI.
yeah,
And the challenge they're going to have is they're going to spend a ton of money and they're not going to get a lot of ROI. And the reason why is because AI is no different than any other technology innovation. You've got to
hmm
have a business reason and a business case to do it. And if your primary business reason and business case is to reduce operational expense by eliminating resources, you will get some of that, but you may be disappointed as well. The
yeah.
value and power of AI is driving that efficiency that then frees up resources to focus on more strategic things by automating a lot of manual and repetitive tasks using AI to do that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds to me like these are the kinds of things that show up everywhere. For
Oh,
like that, you need this sober investor mindset to pick the right projects to greenlight. You can't just get excited about something, and that any technology you add this sort of brittleness where a human could have or you come in to automate something and you realize like, oh, you don't have a process here.
yeah.
Like what are we trying to do?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of the companies where I'm currently working with just has a very manual process when they acquire a new organization. And here's a perfect example of where you can develop AI bots to
yeah,
streamline that process and really exponentially increase not only the onboarding time, but potentially increase the number of acquisitions you can do in a given year because of eliminating a lot of that manual process and looking
yeah.
at how AI can drive that efficiency and value for the organization.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what are you the most excited about for Fortium and the upcoming year ahead?
Well, the fact that we continue to grow and there's some advantages being the largest in our industry really means we get to drive a lot of where these types of offerings are providing value into companies. And so that's one side of it. And the other side of it is I couldn't imagine being in another industry than in technology. I
Yeah.
absolutely love what I do. And I'm not a technologist for the sake of technology. So I'm not a big gamer. I'm not a big geek or widget type person. What really I enjoy about the technology industry and what really gets my blood pumping is how technology can be utilized to really drive growth and profitability within companies. Because there's a ton of companies that are just not taking advantage of
Yeah.
what the power of technology can do. And they don't have a really strong technology strategy or aligning that strategy with the overall objectives they're wanting to do and where technology comes into play that role. That's what I'd done for most of my career and have had a very successful career doing that. And when you actually do what you absolutely love doing, it's a whole nother level of passion and value that you can provide to companies because of that.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on your podcast, and hopefully this was valuable to your listeners.
Absolutely.